Nick Roberts is a different sort of accountant. He makes sense and he gives great advice that you can follow and use. Particularly helpful in business building, not just debits and credits and all that sort of stuff. So I wasn't surprised when he won an international award for his blog. Unusual to see accountants producing information that's of interest and that wins awards. So I just had to talk to Nick about his award-winning blog.
Nick Roberts, congratulations on being one of the outstanding bloggers in the accountancy area.
Thank you very much, Winner. It's very kind of you to say so.
Now, let's find out first of all what you do and set the scene for how you came about to have an award-winning blog.
Well, I'm an accountant with a difference because I've been doing accountancy for many years and I've soon come to the realisation, or did many years ago, that clients need a lot more help than just accountancy and tax. Because what I find is that the typical small business owner is very good at what they do. They may be a great plumber or a fantastic quantity surveyor, but I find that through no fault of their own, they're not so good on the marketing and on the finance side because haven't had the benefit of that experience. So I think that as a trusted advisor, my job is to provide the clients with as much information to enable them to run their businesses better. And that's basically the stance that I take, Winner, and why I do what I do. And I find that one of the most effective ways of providing information is to do it through my blogs, posts that I do.
Okay, so take me through it. Obviously that means you collect the email addresses, don't you, of everybody you meet and all of your clients so that you've at least got somebody that you can invite to read your blog.
That is true, yes, I do that. And also, obviously, because it goes out globally, that's the great thing about a blog. And it's on a system, US system called WordPress, which is pretty widely available. So anyone can read it, and I get lots of comments from different people, which is why I've gone for that. I've obtained those global recognition, if you like, because so many people are able to see it on the internet globally. It's good.
So when you decided to do the blog, you knew you had some people that might read it, and you hoped that other people would read it. What was the next step then? How did you settle down and get it all going?
Well, I think the hardest part of the blog is actually getting going. And if your listeners are thinking of doing a blog, and I'm always telling my clients and readers that they should be doing likewise, often the hardest part is to actually get going and make that first initial step. Because like many things outside our own sort of sphere of expertise, sometimes these things can seem daunting, can't they, Winnow?
Indeed they can. So how did you get yourself going?
Well, I've always enjoyed writing, and I have really felt that over the years, I'd probably given time, and maybe when I retire, I'd probably like to do some writing. So I've always been into writing, so really it was just a case of convincing myself I had the time to do the blogs. And once you start, what I've found is that it's easy. It's just that first initial push, and also for many people probably it's given them getting the confidence that they are able to do the blogs and also find enough useful information to write about.
That's a good question, isn't it? How do you find useful information to write about?
Well, for me, it's very, very easy because there are just so many topics to write about, and I could just blog forever, I think, because there are just so many useful things to talk about, because my clients are interested, they're typical small business owners, and they just need to know about marketing, they need to know about finance, they need to know about, a huge different range of things. And tax and GST and all those different things. So really, the potential list of subjects for me is just endless.
And I suppose you can take note of the questions you're being asked on a day-to-day basis and think if that person's got a question about that, many of my blog readers will have too.
That is correct, because you can, if something's coming up regularly or lots of different clients are asking you, I've got an 0800 information line, which is 0800 Ask Nick. I'll get questions on there. I've got a free business clinic. So yes, there's lots of different ways that people are going to ask you questions. So yes, it's easy to sort of focus in on the areas that are popular. And also I find that after you've done a few blogs, you can actually see which areas are most popular with the clients. And that's obviously makes sense if you can focus on those areas which you know are going to be of greatest interest. Because sometimes something which is of great interest to me, I do sometimes find that other people don't find it quite so interesting.
And do you judge their interest by the responses you get, the feedback you get on your blog?
Not so much that. I do get some feedback, but more a case of how many people have read the blogs winner is what I use as a measure.
Uh-huh.
Because on WordPress it tells you precisely how many people have looked at each blog, and you can rank the blogs in terms of how many people have read them. So I just know that certain topics are going to get more interest than others.
And if they're interesting, then you continue to talk about that theme.
Indeed, there's lots of different things. Marketing's popular, although sometimes people find marketing tough to get. It's a bit like blogging marketing generally. Tax, GST, different things like that is often the most popular types of blog.
Now, Nick, how often does your blog go out?
Well, I do mine weekly on my own blog site on WordPress, but I also do a monthly blog for a blogging site, which is a Kiwi blogging site called Small Business Blog, so I blog on there as well. So that's quite a useful site, and I do the occasional one for some other sites as well, but primarily it's my own blog site that I do.
And do you have a specific time you set aside to write your blog article?
Well, what I found is that, unfortunately for me, it tends to, because I'm so busy in the week with client work, I'm afraid it tends to encroach onto my weekends more often than not, which is a bit of a blow, but that's the way life goes, isn't it, really? So that's what tends to happen. But, yes, I tend to get up early and just dash it off before I start the day, maybe.
And what's the typical length of one of your blogs? You know, a couple of paragraphs, 200 or 300 words?
Well, I mean, I'm getting better at making them smaller because in my early days, I mean, we all like the sound of our own voice, don't we?
Yes, indeed.
And it's easy to sort of go on and on and on. So I have made a good stride to keep them shorter. So now they could be 2 to 4 paragraphs, and sometimes I'll put a diagram in there. And my latest one, which will be coming out today, hasn't come out yet, but it will be coming out today, I think, is about joint venture marketing, because I happened to be going for a coffee, meeting someone for a coffee in the village, and I found a very good boardwalk sign from outside a shoe shop, not a client of mine, and it was a fantastic thing. It just said, get a free $50 voucher for a pedicure. And I thought it was a really, really effective, useful example of a joint venture. So I got the mobile phone out, took a photo of that, and this was a couple of weeks ago, and I suddenly thought this week, right, I'll just do a blog about that. Because sometimes clients find the concept of joint venture or host-beneficiary marketing very difficult to get to grips with. But I thought that was a fantastic example of how you can make that work in practice.
So, Nick, will this be the first time you've put a photo into your blog?
I think there have been a couple before, but this is probably the first time a photo is going to go in there. And obviously that's just an example of how the little blackboard sign is going to work, basically, and get them some good business. Because the best type of joint venture marketing, as you'll confirm, it costs a shoe shop nothing. And, of course, the pedicure people are thrilled because the lifetime value of the customer, of course, for them is fantastic, isn't it?
That's right. Now, have you
They do the first one for free, and then hopefully they'll keep coming back for years.
Now, have you tried putting in movies or audios to your blog yet?
We haven't done any movies or audios yet. On my newsletter, which is a separate thing, we've just video. We were doing video. Actually, that's not true, actually. On the newsletter I do, we have been putting some videos on there. But the last newsletter, we did an audio blog, which was you, of course, waxing on about business cards, because I thought it was a very good article you did there, and I was very impressed with that. Because often people talk about, they think marketing can be complicated or too expensive or just too difficult to get to grips with, but often we forget the most basic things about marketing, don't we?
Yep, that's right. So tell me, the acid test, can you trace business emanating from your blog?
Well, you can do, because any client I get, I know exactly where they've come from. So it's difficult to make that. So anyone who makes an inquiry, the first thing I ask them is whereabout they'd heard about me. And I've just analysed my sources of business, which I do every year, so I know precisely where all my businesses come from, exact numbers of clients and percentage of different sources. So yes, you can is a short answer.
And the blog is figured as a source of business?
Yes, indeed it is. It's become, I've got some inquiries, not just in Hawke's Bay, but nationally in New Zealand, that's right.
Well, that's
But
great.
the other thing is, Werner, of course, that it also, I find it useful, it positions you as an expert in your field.
And that's important. People want to deal with experts, don't they?
They do indeed, and I think that's one of the fantastic things about it. And also, I found it very useful because the more things you do along those lines, people will say, oh, Nick's a bit different. He's not your typical accountant because so few accountants do them. So it positions you as not only as an expert, but also makes you stand out from the crowd. And as we know, that's very important in business nowadays, isn't it?
Standing out from the crowd is what it's all about. Nick, if some of our listeners were thinking of doing a blog, what would you say to them?
I'd say get stuck in. Don't mess around. It's easy to do it. You've just got to condition yourself. And I found now that blogging, I've got it in the same state as like going to the gym or going for a run. If I don't do it, I start to fret and worry about it. So I've now conditioned myself to do it. And that, of course, is really the answer. That's the sort of the major battle out of the way.
Nick Roberts. Fantastic stuff. I think he's given you chapter and verse there on how to write your own blog, how to get going with it. Now, if you want to email Nick, it's Nick, N-I-C-K, at abac.co.nz. You can call him on 646 877 8311. Or if you're in New Zealand, 06 877 8311. And of course, his website is abac.co.nz. Or you can enrol for his blog and have it automatically downloaded by going to Empower, that's EMPOWER, yourbusiness.co.nz. Great stuff from Nick Roberts. Make sure you get his blog. It makes excellent reading.